Welcome to the first episode of Empire State of Sports. I'm Landon. I'm from New York, hence the name. In this podcast, we're going to talk about all sports and have a special section for each New York team. Well, let's just hop right into it. We're going to start today talking about this weekend's Wild Card Weekend playoff games. We're going to start out with Browns versus Texans. Let me just tell you, CJ Stroud is really proving to be one of the league's best quarterbacks and most definitely the best option in this year's draft. Stroud was 16 for 21 with 3 touchdowns, throwing to a 157.2 rating, which was much better than his competitor Flacco, who seems to lose all of his magic in this game, as he threw 2 pick sixes, going 34 for 46 with an 80.6 rating. This leads to the question, how far can CJ Stroud take the Texans? He really looked like a veteran quarterback out there, not being afraid to get hit in the pocket, taking that extra time needed to make the big plays, as shown in his touchdown to Dalton Schultz, which was thrown over 3 receivers. Defenders, sorry. First episode, Yeah, honestly, I really do think CJ Stroud can take this team to the next level, especially with their top tier defensive play we saw from the Texans, who had 2 picks and 4 sacks in this game. This leads us to the Dolphins versus Chiefs game. This game had a lot of buzz going around it, as we all saw that the wind chill was going to bring the weather down to negative 30 degrees, and the actual temperature, not the real feel, was 11 degrees. We saw a storyline of Hill versus his former team. Hill did have a decent game, not a great game by his standards, but he did get a touchdown and have 62 yards on 8 targets and 5 receptions. After the game, he did have a series of funny social media posts regarding this game, regarding how his lips were chapped and how he got snuffed by one of the Chiefs defenders. The Chiefs did dominate this game. However, this did not come without some questionable calls, as there were a series of questionable calls of roughing the passer plays against Patrick Mahomes. But regardless, the Chiefs deserved to win this game with the play the Dolphins brought to the field. Weather did play a factor, as both quarterbacks were subpar, with Tua throwing 20 for 39 for 199 yards and an interception, and Mahomes throwing 23 for 41 with 1 touchdown throw, as this game was mostly dominated on the ground and through field goals. Rashee Rice has proven to be a weapon for Mahomes with 8 receptions on 12 targets and 130 yards, including a touchdown. Kelsey, however, has seen his decline continue in this game, having only 71 yards, no touchdowns, and it seems as though his red zone play has completely been thrown out the window. Now, I want to blame Taylor Swift for this, as I really do not like everyone talking about Taylor Swift, like any NFL fan. I just want to watch football. I don't want to see the camera pan to her every 5 seconds at a window, dancing around. Like, I kind of just want to watch the game. But I do think this is just Travis Kelce aging. This brings us to Packers versus Cowboys. Mike McCarthy faces his former team in what could be a job-deciding game. He couldn't live up to his job, as he has a poor game, losing 32-48. Now, Jerry Jones, after the game, said he couldn't even comprehend this loss. This definitely, I think, is the end of Mike McCarthy's era in Dallas, and we could see them going after a very good coach like Bill Belichick that is on the market. Aaron Jones dominated this game, having 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dak has a poor game, as the annual Dak Prescott playoff choke does happen. He threw 2 interceptions, one being a pick six, going 41 for 60, all for an 89.8 rating. This, as well, seems the end of the Dak era in Dallas. Jordan Love, however, is proving to be a great successor to Rodgers in Green Bay, going 16 for 21 with 3 touchdowns and a 157.2 rating. This seems as another situation where Green Bay has another franchise quarterback on their hands. We will see how Jordan Love plays in the next round. This brings us to Rams versus Lions. Matthew Stafford's return to Ford Field, where he had a great game. It was a dogfight till the very end, but the Lions did pull out on top, having their first playoff win since 1992. Stafford in his return went 25 for 36 with 2 touchdowns, a 129 and a 120.9 rating. Jared Goff also had a great game, going 22 for 27 with 277 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 121.8 rating. However, this did not go as the only story in this game. Puka Nacua continues his historic rookie season, setting the NFL single game playoff record with 181 yards for a rookie. The difference in this game seemed to be Dan Campbell's aggressive play style, yet again, leading to higher scoring drives compared to the Rams, who relied mostly on field goals, in a 24-23 win by the Lions. Next, we have the Steelers versus the Bills. The game was moved to Monday due to historical storms in Buffalo this past weekend. This caused an uproar in the fan base, as we have seen many classic snow games in the past, especially in Buffalo. However, this game was still crazy. We saw Bills fans show up and shovel for $20 an hour, one of them even bringing a pipe and using it as a slide to shovel the snow. There were no assigned seats in this game, just assigned rows and sections, which could have ended very poorly, but it didn't, because it's Buffalo. Josh Allen had an incredible game, proving to the league he is an elite quarterback. He had 3 TDs, going 21 for 30, and had 1 rushing touchdown, with James Cook running the ground game outside of him with over 80 yards. Mason Rudolph was obviously not the answer for Pittsburgh. He went 22 for 39, and he had an interception. It just seems as though this offense all year could not perform, and this could altogether lead to the end of another legendary coach in Mike Tomlin. Lastly, on the Bills side, Kincaid is proving to be an elite tight end, as he has 3 receptions, 59 yards, and a touchdown. Definitely a very valuable weapon for Josh Allen, and a name to keep an eye on in this playoff run. This all led to a 31-17 Bills win. The last game is Eagles versus Bucks. A.J. Brown, prior to this game, removed all of his Eagles-related posts from his social media. This is strange, as he did have some comments throughout the season that would make one believe that he did love his time in Philadelphia. This game also was a coach-deciding game, or a job-deciding game, as Sirianni was being said that Nick Sirianni could lose his job if he did lose this game. And he did not show up. The tush push was even stopped this game with a face mask call that did get missed. But it was stopped nonetheless. Jalen Hurts had a solid game, but could not capitalize in the end zone, going 25 for 35 with 250 yards with only 1 TD to 100.9 rating. DeAndre Swift could not replicate his regular season success, as he only got 34 yards on 10 carries. Baker was the main story of this game, proving to all teams that gave up on him that they made the wrong choice, as he went 22 for 36 with 337 yards and 3 TDs with a 119.8 rating. After this game, we did learn that Jason Kelsey will be retiring, and this was his last season. Jason Kelsey did have a great career, making 7 Pro Bowls, obviously winning a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Wish the best to him in retirement. Just a shame he couldn't win one more before retiring. It'll also be interesting to see how the tush push will work without him next year. Now we have the divisional round preview. We have the Ravens versus the Texans on 4:30 Saturday. The Ravens come into this game 9-point favorites at home. But I think they should not be favored this high because we all saw how CJ Stroud played last week and how that Texans defense played. It's going to be very interesting to see if CJ Stroud could replicate his success last week against a formidable Ravens team. A big boost for the Ravens this week is going to be that Mark Andrews is most likely designated to return from injury. I expect this game to be a defensively run game as both teams have top 5 defenses in the league. The deciding factor is going to be if the Texans can contain Lamar and if the Texans offense could overcome its lack of experience. Before I give you my pick for the game, I'm going to give you some TD picks. I expect Lamar to get a rushing touchdown, and I expect Dalton Schultz to get a touchdown. Now, my pick is going to upset a lot of people, but I pick the Texans with a major upset over the Baltimore Ravens, winning 24-21. I really believe that CJ Stroud is an elite level quarterback. And with that, on top of the elite level defensive play from the Texans, I really think he can take them all the way. Next, we have the NFC game for Saturday at 8:15, Packers at the 49ers. What's interesting is both Kittle and CMC are questionable, which can prove to be a very big factor in this game as those are 2 of their biggest offensive weapons. Jaden Reed last week was contained in a win over the Cowboys, but I think he is a huge factor on if the Green Bay Packers can overcome the 49ers. And if the 49ers can contain him, I don't see a Green Bay victory. I would expect a quiet game from Aaron Jones on the ground, as the 49ers have one of the best rush defenses in the league. That brings me to the Packers defense, which has been shaky all season. Are they going to be able to hold up against one of the best teams in the league? I really don't see it happening. The 49ers are favored by 9.5, and I feel like the only way the Packers win this game is if one of the offensive weapons on the Niners is out this week, as I don't expect the Green Bay defense to hold up the Niners. I picked the 49ers to win 38-21, with my TD picks being Romeo Doubs and Deebo Samuel. That brings us to the Sunday games. Starting off with the Lions versus the Bucks, 3 p.m. Sunday. Seeing the energy at Ford Field last week, it will be a hostile environment for any opponent, one that could even rival Lincoln Financial Field. Expect very few rushing opportunities as both teams are top 5 defenses against the run. With this, the Lions are also 6-2 at home, which is going to be a deciding factor on my pick. The Bucks are going to need another big game in the air like they had against Philly, and I'm not sure I can trust anyone outside of Mike Evans on this team to get the job done. With both teams being evenly matched at defense, but the Lions having a much greater offense, I can only see one outcome. But first, let me give you my TD picks. My TD picks for this game are going to be Sam Laporta of the Lions and Mike Evans of the Bucks. Now, on to my pick for the game. As I said, I can only see one outcome, and that's the Lions winning 34-24. On to the last game, the Sunday night game, 6:30 p.m. Chiefs, Bills, third time in the playoffs. Both times the Chiefs had came out on top. In this game, I expect a lot of rushing, with both teams having poor rushing defenses and good pass defenses. The Bills are 7-2 at home, and the Chiefs are 6-2 on the road. So this game, actually, I don't think really has much of a home field advantage, besides maybe the weather. A big question in this game is who Mahomes' number one weapon this week is going to be, with the decline of Travis Kelce and the emergence of Rashee Rice, as I said earlier in this podcast. Another huge question mark is going to be if Josh Allen can keep his interceptions in control against an elite passing defense. I also believe that Kincaid is going to serve as another great passing option, as the secondary of the Bills is so good that deep passes are going to be hard to make. As I mentioned earlier, the Chiefs has taken the last two. So this makes it for an interesting pick. I do think this game is going to be extremely tight. But first, let me give you my TD scores. I have James Cook and Isaiah Pacheco scoring this game, as I do believe this game is going to be a ground-heavy game. And finally, I think the Bills come out on top for the first time in 3 meetings in the playoffs, winning 31-28. Well, that does it for my game picks and the recap from this week's NFL games. Now, I want to talk about your New York Giants. Wink Martindale has left, so that leaves with a few possible targets they can go after. I think they can either go internally with Andre Patterson or Jerome Henderson's, their D-line coach and D-backs coach, respectively. I do think if Antonio Pierce does not get the starting coaching job with the Raiders, I do think he would be a great option for the Giants. Staying with the Raiders, as they did hire their offensive lines coach, I do think Patrick Graham would be a great option as the defensive coordinator. The Eagles' defensive coordinator is also a great option, as he did get his, but the one question is he did get his play calling privileges taken away a few games into the season. And lastly, since we do know that the Giants front office does love former Bills executives, and he is a former Bill front office guy himself, I could see them going to Al Holcomb, the Bills' defensive assistant. Now I want to talk about the Giants' new hire. They hire Carmen Brasillo, former Raiders offensive line coach, to fill the void. He only 11 teams allowed fewer sacks than the Raiders this season, so I do think this could be a very good pickup for the Giants. With the Patriots in 2021, when he first came into the league as a coach too, he helped them finish 8th in rushing yards per game and 6th in points per game. And in 2020, they finished 4th in rushing with 146.6. It's a good signing, but nonetheless, they still need a lot of offensive line help, and I don't think a coach is going to do it. This brings me to the Giants draft strategy. I strongly believe the Giants do not go with a quarterback this draft. Whether that is the right decision or the wrong decision is yet to be seen. But I do think they do go with either an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, or a running back. On the offensive line, they have Joa Alt, the offensive tackle from, I want to say, I can't remember. Sorry. Notre Dame. Yeah. From the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. He could transition to right tackle, as he does have the athletic ability to do so. And I do see him as a great first-round target for the Giants. I think FSU's Keon Coleman, he's a wide receiver at 6'4", 215 pounds. Can be the size the Giants have been lacking for a few years at the position. He also played at Michigan State, which proves he can work in multiple offensive schemes. Now, a guy that I don't think is going to go in the first round, but does have a lot of upside, is a running back slash defensive back, Sion Vaki. He's going to be a later round draft pick, as I said, and his versatility and intensity makes him good in the secondary. But I do think he's going to work more as a running back, and he averaged 7.5 yards per carry and 203 receiving yards on 11 receptions. This could be a good replacement if they do choose to move on from Saquon Barkley. That brings me to the subject of Saquon Barkley himself. I think we should let him go. So many teams have let go of big running backs in recent years, and they've benefited. The Eagles transitioned from Miles Sanders to DeAndre Swift. Well, I do know that they're both getting paid quite a bit. It is one case of a team moving on from a running back. Now on to teams that went with younger guys, which I think are much better examples, but I did want to start off with the Eagles and Miles Sanders. The Rams transitioned from Darrell Henderson when they won the Super Bowl to Kyren Williams. And Kyren Williams has become one of the best running backs in the league this year. The Bucs this year moved on from Leonard Fournette and had Rachaad White. The Cowboys transitioned from Zeke to Tony Pollard. The Vikings transitioned from Dalvin Cook to Madison. Teams have proven time and time again you don't need to pay running backs to be successful, and that production can be replicated and in some cases increase. That's all for the Giants today. I'm going to go on to the Jets, where I have a short little segment for them. But my whole thing is, with many legendary coaches on the market, should the Jets look to replace Robert Saleh? I do think it would work out best for the New York Jets to move on from Robert Saleh this year. I'm not saying he's done a bad job, but I heard Keith McPherson the other day, one of the best voices in the game. He said, name me 5 things that Robert Saleh does well. And I honestly don't see it. We all saw Hard Knocks. We did. We all saw Hard Knocks, and his killer commander attitude got them nowhere. There's no excuses for the Jets not to be looking elsewhere besides Robert Saleh, because with their young core and an aging quarterback, they don't have much time to. They don't have much of a window right now with an aging quarterback and Aaron Rodgers to compete. I do think, though, the Jets do have a lot of young names they can build around to compete. But if they are going for it next year, I do believe the best course of action is to go elsewhere in the coaching. That's all for the NFL news for today. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to move on to NBA. The Bulls unveiled their Ring of Honor, and we see Krause's widow get booed. To me, this was extremely wrong. As I get the way that The Last Dance did make him out to seem, but nonetheless, I think the Bulls CEO said it best. Jerry Krause is a 6-time NBA champion and 2-time NBA Executive of the Year. He was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame for his accomplishments and is an important part of our history. His legacy deserves to be celebrated and respected. I think no matter the decisions he made that may or may not have led to the collapse of a dynasty, to boost someone that's being held this honor, let alone his widow, is just utterly disgraceful. And this even led to Steve Kerr, one of the guys that was inducted into the Ring of Honor, calling out the actions as shameful. Draymond Green returned Monday versus the Grizzlies. Well, let's take a look at his stat line. I don't have it. I don't know why I didn't put it in my notes. I deeply apologize. He had 7 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, in 23 minutes of play. I mean, that's a pretty good game. It's not great, but I think the bigger story here is if he can move on from his foolish antics these past few seasons. He returns from a right now he's returning from an indefinite suspension after striking Yusuf Nurkic during a game against the Suns. During the past few weeks, he's spent ramping up to return. The league did require him to participate in counseling, which I don't know how much benefit that could have to him. I do hope for his sake it did have a lot of benefit. This all did come, however, after a previous 5-game suspension earlier in the season after putting Rudy Gobert in a chokehold, which I just don't know if Draymond can recover from his actions. I really hope for his sake he can, but only time will tell. In trade news, Marvin Bagley and Isaiah Livers were traded to the Wizards for Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscale. Washington will also receive 2025 and 2026 second rounders. Bagley this year is averaging 10.2 points and 4.5 rebounds. I do think he will benefit from a much better team in the Wizards, and I think this is a great trade for both teams, as the Pistons are definitely not looking to compete this year. There wasn't much NBA news for me to digest outside of my New York teams. So that leads me to my New York Knicks. Julius Randle, in a game where Jalen Brunson was out, scores 24 to lead the Knicks over Grizzlies. Miles McBride also scored 19 in this game in his first starting role this year. And the next game, they lost to the Orlando Magic, but he scored 20. So Miles McBride is proving he is a very good bench piece and maybe the 6-man replacement for Emmanuel Quickley. They have won 5 of their last 7, but more recently they've lost 2 of their last 3. That being said, Jalen Brunson was out their past 2 games, so I don't really think it's much to worry about. But their losses could be concerning to the Knicks, who look to be guaranteed a playoff spot and avoid the play-in tournament. For my trade targets for the Knicks, I have DeJounte Murray, Kelly Olynyk, and Alex Len. The Knicks need to make one more trade. I think the OG Anunoby trade was a great trade, a great starting point. They got someone that matches their scheme very well. It seems like he's that missing piece on that top line, but right now they don't have a finisher. They just don't. With that line that just has Randall and no one else, there is nothing coming from that line, and they're losing a lot of games because of it. And they do have a lot to trade away. They have 9 first rounders in the next 5 drafts, and they have Detroit's second rounder in 2024. And they have a ton of salary cap space with the recent trade because they traded away RJ and Quickly. They have a lot of young talent, such as Dante DiVincenzo, and maybe even Quentin Grimes, we could see traded away. But my one issue with my trade targets is DeJounte Murray is represented by Rich Paul, who opposed a trade of Zach LaVine to the Knicks. So for right now, I don't really see DeJounte Murray traded to the Knicks, but I do think he is the best fit. It is going to be interesting to see where the Knicks go. I do not think they are done yet. But yeah, the New York Knicks. We'll see how the season unfolds, but I think if they don't go out and get someone else, it's going to be a huge mistake. This brings me to the Brooklyn Nets. In my opinion, the Nets are in a weird position right now. They're in the fringe. They are not in a position to compete right now. If they were smart, they would trade Michael Bridges and rebuild. As right now, they just are not. And like I said earlier, they're just not in the realm to compete. Trading, and if they do go the opposite route and trade for Donovan Mitchell, like many Nets fans have been calling for, I do think it would be foolish for them right now, as this team needs a lot of work to compete, and just Donovan Mitchell is not going to fix that. We saw last year with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, that was not even enough for this team. So I don't think one player is going to fix it at all. I think they should capitalize on Finney Smith. As right now they're asking for 2 first rounders for him, which would be great if they could get that in return, but I think they may need to lower it to maybe just a first and a second rounder. One guy I do think they should keep though is Cam Thomas, as he's only 22 and he seems like the guy to build around, as he understands the issues with this offense right now, as he did say the offense is slow and needs a lot more movement to be successful. That does it for the NBA news. I know it was short. I'm just getting started. So, and there was a lot of NFL news to get through. So I did need to shorten some of the other ones. But we're going to go on to the NHL news. Sidney Crosby and the Penguins recently snapped the Kraken's 9-game win streak, and they face the Rangers as I'm recording this today, Tuesday. Going to be a crucial game for the Rangers. I do hope they can take down the Kraken, as I am a diehard Ranger fan, but the Kraken have been hot, and it's going to be tough. Samsonov returns versus Red Wings, and he loses 4-2, but is praised by the team as he saved 20 out of 23 shots. Obviously, one of his teammates, Mitch Marner, said, obviously, Samsonov made a couple massive saves for us throughout the game. But it was great to hear fans chant his name and give him the love he deserves. It's great to have Samsonov back, and I hope he does well for the Leafs. Now, former New York Ranger Patrick Kane is injured with a lower body injury yet again as he exits game versus Maple Leafs. To me, this sends a message to any team interested in trading for him, and it may cause his trade value to go down drastically. This is very disappointing, as Patrick Kane has been playing well for the Red Wings this year, and I do hope for him to come back, but it just seems as though his body is starting to fail and give up on him. For one of the best American hockey players of all time, I do hope for him to come back. Now, the All-Star jerseys were revealed. Many fans dislike the design, including me, as the jerseys look like they were designed in an elementary school art class. Now, I have a big segment of news. The NHL has announced its all-star roster, and for me, it's very disappointing as no more Rangers are on the roster, but there are plenty of Canucks and Maple Leafs. Here's a look at the full list of players. William Nylander of the Maple Leafs, Mitch Marner of the Maple Leafs, JT Miller of the Canucks, Elias Pettersson of the Canucks, Brock Bozier of the Canucks, Leon Draisaitl of the Oilers, Morgan Riley of the Maple Leafs, Cale Makar of the Avalanche, Thatcher Demko of the Canucks, Sergei Bobrovsky of the Panthers, Alexander Georgiev of the Avalanche, and Jeremy Swayman of the Bruins. Artemi Panarin is unable to attend. He would make it, as he is one of the league's best players right now, but he is expecting another child with his wife. So the sole Ranger will be Igor Shesterkin. The league also named 10 All-Stars set to participate in a skills competition. Those are going to be Leon Draisaitl, Jack Hughes, Nikita Kucherov, Connor McDavid, David Pastrnak, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and Elias Pettersson. Yet again, there were other 32 other All-Stars, one from each team. I just don't see how there were so many from one team. I guess Canada, you know? But this leads me to my New York Rangers. Panarin continues his hot streak as he opens the game versus the Capitals with a goal on Sunday. Kaapo Kakko did return Sunday as well as he earned the hat. For me, one of my favorite players, Filip Chytil, has returned to skating, and he was seen with Jaromir Jagr. Hopefully he can return soon, but I know those concussions are tricky, and I don't want him to rush back. They split 2 games versus the Caps over the weekend. With Fox having 2 goals in the first game, and like I said, Panarin continuing his hot streak, having a goal Sunday, as well as Alexei Lafreniere. However, Igor Shesterkin's mediocre play has been something to worry about for the New York Rangers, as down the stretch, they need him to perform well if they wish to win the Metropolitan, and even bigger, look for their first Stanley Cup in over 25 years. When it comes to trade, the Rangers have been linked to Zegras, but I don't think they should target him because he is yet another offensive-minded forward. Pairing that with Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Panarin, Trocheck, I feel like all these offensive-minded people, and even Keandre Miller, who is a defenseman, but another offensive-minded guy, I feel like their defense right now is struggling so bad that they should be looking for other defensive-minded guys. We saw last year they went out and got Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, 2 offensive-minded guys, and it did not work out at all as they got torn apart by the Devils in the first round of the playoffs. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, we will see a few names surface that fit the Rangers better. Now, onto the New York Islanders. Unlike the Rangers, they should target Zegras to boost their offense. I do think they have been lacking a little bit in their offensive side. And to get Zegras would be a huge boost for a team that is on the fringe of competing right now. They did beat the Leafs, and this shows a very bright side and what the Islanders are capable of. They converted on the power play twice, and they battled back from a early 3-1 deficit, showing the team can compete with the best in the league. Now, I think a guy that should be moved for this team, the New York Islanders, is Wahlstrom, as his inconsistency has proved detrimental for the Islanders, playing just 19 of 38 games, struggling to replicate the 33-point season he had in to 21. Well, Wallstrom, when he came into the league, was a guy that I thought was going to be great, and he did prove in his first season he was a good player, but he has not been able to replicate that since then. And right now, it just seems like he does not have a role in this Islanders team, and they should just go out and get whatever they can get for him. Now, onto the New Jersey Devils, a team I despise, but I'm going to talk about them anyway, because this is a sports talk show, and it is based in New York, and they are kind of a New York team, kind of, not really, but I think the biggest thing for them is they need to move on from Vitek Vanacek. He is the worst goalie in the league. He has an 882 save percentage, which is the worst of any goalie who has played at least 20 games. His goals saved above average is 13.42. That beats Ilya Samsonov for worst. Don't expect the Devils to overpay for a goalie, though, until someone else finally does it. I think a name to look out for, though, for him is Jacob Markstrom of the Calgary Flames. He's a goalie that has been elite for some years now, and a veteran that could boost this Devils team to the next level and help them compete in the Metropolitan and their hopes of winning a Stanley Cup. Recently, they were shut out 3-0 by Boston, which it just seems like without Jack Hughes, their offense is also lost. So you might see them go out and get another offensive player. They thought that when they acquired Timo Meier, he would be that guy. But ever since he's been on the Devils, his play has just really tanked. And to me right now, they can't prove a legit threat in the Metropolitan and the NHL in general until they go out and get a goalie and another offensive guy to pair with Jack Hughes. On to Major League Baseball news. Free agency has continued to move slow, with the only notable move this past week being Marcus Stroman to the Yankees. This is in part due to irrational demands by a lot of the free agents. Blake Snell is demanding $240 million. Until he lowers this price, I don't see him going anywhere in general. But another player that was signed recently, Shoto Amanga, did impress in his debut press conference signing. Started singing the signature "Go Cubs Go" song, and it seems like he's going to be a beloved player for the Cubs and in the MLB in general. Back to free agency, Jordan Montgomery, also known as Monty, is favored to sign back in Texas. Now, would I love him back on the Yankees? Yeah, I think he's a guy that eats innings. I think that he is maybe that B tier, A tier pitcher. He's like somewhere in between. I'd give him like a B plus. But I'm not giving him more than Carlos Rodon got last year. I just can't bring myself to do it. And right now, I feel like the only team willing to do so is the Texas Rangers, as they did see the best side of Jordan Montgomery when they won the World Series last year. Jordan Hicks has signed with the San Francisco Giants as they finally land a free agent. As it seems like they failed with almost everyone recently. And they are going to convert him to a starter, which has not worked out in the past with St. Louis, as he did pitch to like a 5 ERA as a starter in St. Louis. But with a new worked arsenal featuring a new and improved splitter, he looks to put his name on the map as a top line starter. And I do hope for the Giants' sake he does do that. But honestly, I don't see Jordan Hicks working out as a starter, and I do see him move to the bullpen once Robbie Ray returns sometime this summer. Right now, Cody Bellinger seems to have no market outside of the Chicago Cubs. This is very strange because we have seen Cody Bellinger be one of the top guys in the league, and last year it seemed like he returned to that form, just being a different version of himself, a guy that instead of being the power only guy, he did hit for contact, hitting 307 last year, and he still did have some home runs, hitting over 20 home runs last year. I do think eventually he does find a suitor that is willing to pay him what he's looking for. Even though right now it does seem outrageous what he's looking for, I do think he gets it. One of the top DHs on the market, Jorge Soler, has been connected to the Red Sox and the Mets as they both look to fill a DH hole that they had last year. Last year, the Mets had Daniel Vogelbach at DH for most of the year, and he was hated by that fan base. So for their sake, I do hope they get him. I don't see him going to the Mets, though. I just don't see the Mets signing anyone else. Sadly for them, I just don't think Steve Cohen's running the team anymore. I think I'm going to talk about it a little later. I think the new president of baseball operation is holding him in check a little bit, and I do see Jorge Soler going to the Red Sox, and he's going to mash in that stadium and probably terrorize my Yankees. So I'm upset about that, but I do see him going to the Red Sox. He had over an 850 OPS last year with almost 40 home runs. Guys, awesome. He was also the World Series MVP for the Braves a few years back. Jorge Soler is a guy that I would see signing for around 3 years, 75 to 4 years, 100. Now on to the 2024 Hall of Fame preview. Debuting on the Baseball Writers Association ballot in 2024 are Jose Bautista, Adrian Beltre, Bartolo Colon, Adrian Gonzalez, Matt Holliday, Victor Martinez, Joe Mauer, Brandon Phillips, Jose Reyes, James Fields, Chase Utley, and David Wright. Next week, I am going to tell you my personal ballot. Oh, you know what? I'll tell you my ballot today. But it's going to be a little later. I do only see maybe one or two of those guys getting in, as a lot of those guys are fringe, great players, but they're the Hall of Good. A few of the notable players returning to the ballot are Todd Helton, who received 72% of the ballots in 2023. He's on the ballot for the sixth time, so eventually he will make it in. I do see him making it in this year. Billy Wagner at 68.1, one of the best closers of all time. I do think he deserves to be in. A lot of people don't, because he did blow a lot of saves at the end of his career, especially for the Mets. But he's still a great pitcher, still one of the best of all time, should be in. Andrew Jones at 58.1% should also be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he gets it. Gary Sheffield is on his last year on the ballot, I believe. He's at 55%. And I don't see him making it in, but another guy who deserves to be in. Here are all of the returning names on the ballot and their percentages. Todd Helton's at 72.2 on his sixth year on the ballot. Billy Wagner's at 68.1 on his ninth year. Andrew Jones, 58.1, seventh year. Gary Sheffield, 55%, 10th year. Carlos Beltran, 46.5, second year. Alex Rodriguez, 35.7, third year. Manny Ramirez, 33.2, eighth year. Omar Vizquel, 19.5, seventh year. Andy Pettit, 17.0, sixth year. Bobby Abreu, 15.4, fifth year. Jimmy Rollins, 12.9, third year. Mark Burley, 10.8, fourth year. Francisco Rodriguez, 10.8, second year. Torrey Hunter, 6.9, fourth year. Now, I am going to reveal my ballot. My ballot is going to be Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, Andrew Jones, Joe Mauer, Alex Rodriguez, Gary Sheffield, Billy Wagner, Joe Mauer, and Andy Pettitte. I know Andy Pettitte's kind of a guy that people just don't associate with the Hall of Fame, but I think he is so good, and he is very similar to a lot of the guys that are currently in the Hall of Fame. I think he's better than a lot of the guys in the Hall of Fame. I think he really deserves it. If I were to take out Andy Pettitte, though, I'd probably put Manny Ramirez as that guy. But yeah, that's my Hall of Fame ballot. Now we're moving on to towards the end of the podcast, where I'm going to talk about the New York Mets first, and then I'm going to talk about the Yankees. I feel like this offseason, the Mets have gone back to their old ways, back with the Wilpons, where they've acquired two aging Yankees that were outcasts. Severino had a terrible year last year, career worst, and they signed him for over $10 million. Harrison Bader, a guy that I best see as a platoon guy, they also signed him for $10 million. I don't see these moves working out for the Mets, and I don't know why they would spend money on those two. And for me right now, I think they're proving Scherzer right, saying they won't compete for 2 years. I think this is all in part to the new president of baseball operations, David Stearns, making Cohen stand down after having an irresponsible last two off seasons, causing them to have a top 3 payroll in baseball at number 2 with a $270 million payroll, only $15 million behind the Yankees, with a very incomplete roster. Although they are interested in Jorge Soler and Blake Snell, I don't see them making the splash on a big free agent this offseason, as their payroll is just too much for a team that has so many holes. The Sean Manaea signing was a decent signing for the team, who signed for 2 years, $28 million. Although his ERA is in the high fours, he has shown flashes of greatness before, and I think that's a guy they can easily plug into the number 4 or 5 spot. Now, on to the New York Yankees. They're still in on starting pitchers after signing Marcus Stroman, who, to me, Marcus Stroman is another risky player in the rotation, but at worst, he's an MLB-proven pitcher that craves the spotlight. And the best he can be, and if he plays to the best he can be, he's the bulldog, big game pitcher the Yankees have been lacking behind Cole. He has a high ground ball rate. He had a sub-3 ERA in the first half last year. I think he's going to benefit a lot from Matt Blake having that wicked sinker. I think that is going to devastate hitters next year. He eats innings, having over 200 innings twice and 180 innings twice. Sometimes, I think the fans need to realize you need to sign players you don't like to win a championship, and if Cashman can put his issues with him aside, so can the fans. But right now, they are also in on other starting pitchers, but they're not willing to overpay for Snell, and they're not going to overpay for Cesar Burns. So for me, right now, I do think this is the rotation going into the year. I would be disappointed if it is the rotation going into the year, because if the Yankees have to rely on Carlos Rodon, who does appear to have lost weight, the front office has not done the job this offseason. I do think there is a huge need to go out and get another starting pitcher right now, as the rotation is just one guy away. I think the team is just one stud, legit stud, and I think Blake Snell's that perfect guy to go out and get from being the team to be this season. They are also in on many relievers. Neris Hayer and a possible reunion with Lonnie Peralta. I think Hector Neris is a great player. He has got a wicked splitter. He had a 1.71 ERA last year. I think he's a great pickup, but I think the guy that could bring them over the top is Josh Hader. But I'm not really willing to pay relievers, as we've seen time and time again. Matt Blake turn no-name guys into studs. Ian Hamilton last year, Clay Holmes the year before. He unlocked the potential of Michael King, who's now going to be a front-of-the-line starter for San Diego this year. Clark Schmidt. There's just a bunch of guys that I just don't see the need to pay relievers anymore in this league. Um, there have been other trade rumblings as people have been talking about a Glaber for Luis Ariz trade. The only way I see that happening is if they get Luzardo in return too. But I feel like they could even make that trade happen centered around Peraza and maybe a Spencer Jones. Personally, I don't want to trade Spencer Jones as I think he's got a huge upside in a stadium that favors left-handed hitters, and he does seem to be a duplicate of Aaron Judge from the left-handed side of the bat. But it is a trade to look out for, seeing that the Marlins have been trying to acquire Gleyber Torres for a few years now. I think Gleyber Torres and Peraza might be able to do it for Luzardo and Ariz. Personally, I don't want to trade Gleyber Torres as I think he is a top 10 second baseman in this game right now. But Luis Ariz would be the leadoff hitter that the team has been lacking for a while, and it's honestly such a tough decision to make. And I think the best way would be to acquire Ariz without trading Gleyber Torres, but I just don't know if that's possible right now. But to get Luzardo in return too would be the starter this team is also lacking, and I feel like it would be a cap to an A plus all season. Gleyber Torres does have the fans buzzing with a Gio Urshela post on his story, making many fans think a Gio Urshela reunion is likely, and I feel like that would provide a consistent contact bat at a position that had been a black hole in Donaldson and could provide rest to an aging DJ LeMahieu. I do believe the Yankees right now are also laying in the weeds for Cody Bellinger, like they did for Mark Teixeira. Now, if it happens, I do think it's very unlikely it does happen, but I do think they are monitoring Cody Bellinger's market, and I do think that's another way they can cap off an A plus all season. Like I said, it's been a good off season, but they need one more big and successful move. To big move to be successful. It's a move for Soto, proof they're going for it now, and in order to go for it now, it seems like they need one more big name. Gleyber Torres is also making headlines yet again as he's forming a bond with Juan Soto, FaceTiming him on his Twitch stream. Yeah, I do think it's great. This Yankees team does have a much different vibe compared to years in the past. They do seem like a team this year, and I think that's great. Lastly, I just want to talk about what a Soto extension could look like. Soto is one of the best players. I do think deep down he wants to stay a Yankee. And I do think an extension would look somewhere around 13 years, 540 million, rivaling a Shohei Ohtani contract. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed the first edition of Empire State of Sports.